This is the second part of a 3-video series. If you haven't yet, I'd highly recommend watching the first part, which I have linked in the description, before you continue to this one. Beginning with Narmer's unification of Egypt's upper and lower regions and the formation of an Egyptian identity under Pharaoh Djoser, Egypt's Old Kingdom brought the nation 400 years of prosperity and power, during which it would cement itself in world history by achieving the greatest architectural feats of the ancient world. However, all good things must come to an end, no matter how big and shiny they are. At the end of this 400-year period, the Nile's yearly floods began to fail, and the ensuing famines worsened scattered conflicts around Egypt until the entire nation sunk into turmoil. The power of the central government in Memphis was already shaky, the once wealthy city rendered bankrupt by the vast ambitions of its architect pharaohs. When this turmoil hit, Memphis failed altogether and became nothing but one of many competing sovereign powers. These powers were called nomes, each ruled by its own nomarch, and were mildly reminiscent of Greek city-states, often warring with each other for control and resources. Thus began the first intermediate period of Egypt, a time between kingdoms when no distinct Egypt existed at all. As nomes battled each other for dominance, two centers of power emerged. The rulers of Memphis moved their capital to the city of Herakleopolis, which became the de facto capital of Upper Egypt, while a then obscure nome named Thebes seized Lower Egypt, splitting the nation down the middle, again. Eventually, a powerful king from Thebes reunited the nation through conquest again, and became the first pharaoh of the next period of Egypt's history, the Middle Kingdom. While the Old Kingdom was defined by the marks it left on the world, and the New Kingdom would go down in history as the zenith of Egypt's military and diplomatic might, there is no easy way to summarize the Middle Kingdom. Instead of having a single crowning achievement, this was a period of evolution where every aspect of Egyptian life was constantly undergoing radical change. The Middle Kingdom functioned as a period of self-discovery for Egypt, culminating in the emergence of an identity which would endure for millennia and paving the road without which the nation's future splendor would have been impossible. Here we are, at the dawn of the Middle Kingdom. Mentuhotep II, the guy who just reunited Egypt, is a big ball, with pretty big balls. No sooner had he brought Egypt's fractured nomes under one banner than he picked up arms once more, this time against his new people. By suppressing revolts, punishing those who had remained loyal to the old dynasty, and rewarding the nomes that had been loyal to him, Mentuhotep established a tight web of power and loyalties which set the stage for another vast period of political stability, such as had been enjoyed in the Old Kingdom. As soon as he laid down his khopesh, he picked up the brush and mallet and became a great patron of art and architecture. He raised a sprawling, multi-level mortuary complex adorned with stunning works of art, and would have built even more had he not found himself occupying that very complex soon after it was completed. This complex was a stark break from previous tradition. Instead of standing in defiance of the landscape like the pyramids were made to do, Mentuhotep built his complex into a cliff face, blending it in with the landscape and signaling a greater respect and unity with his environment. This attitude would be echoed in the tomb of each and every Middle Kingdom ruler, who mirrored Mentuhotep's choices in their own complexes. This break with tradition was a symptom of one of the greatest shifts in Middle Kingdom thought, the fall of the pharaohs from divinity. In the Old Kingdom, it had been the pharaoh's sole influence that united the nation. They commissioned all art, all great works, and could choose to portray themselves however they wanted. As such, they chose to cast themselves as deities. However, as Egypt began to fracture, individual nomes acquired more wealth, commissioned their own art, and began to disregard the pharaoh's influence. This redistribution of wealth, power, and influence persisted past the first intermediary period and into the Middle Kingdom, causing cultural differences to develop within the nation and rendering most of the pharaohs more humble than before. This humbleness was further reflected in the new practice of co-regency, where a younger man would rule alongside the pharaoh, sharing responsibility while being trained to one day take over the nation. When Pharaoh Mentuhotep IV sent his co-regent, a young man named Amenemhat, to oversee an expedition quarrying stones for the pharaoh's tomb, a legend was born. First, a gazelle gave birth on the stone that had been selected for the pharaoh's sarcophagus, signifying that the stone was blessed with vigor and life and fit for a great king. Then, as the party began to run out of water, a great rainstorm hit. When it cleared, it left behind it a great well with enough water to sustain the entire expedition. It was said that the gods had shown favor to Amenemhat by revealing these miracles to him, and he soon succeeded the relatively short-reigning and boring Mentuhotep IV on the throne. He moved his capital to a new city, Ititawi, just south of Memphis. By doing so, he distanced himself from the old dynasty, which had united Egypt by bloodshed and built stronger ties with the once vanquished Memphisites, thus laying to rest the deep hostilities they had harbored against the pharaohs. Amenemhat was seen as one of the greatest rulers of his age, loved by all of Egypt, except for the guy who assassinated him. His successors would take advantage of this deeper integration to usher in a golden age in Egypt, constructing a vast temple complex to the new supreme god, Amun, and creating beautiful necropoli. Senusret III, the mightiest king of the Middle Kingdom, would be born from this prestigious dynasty. He destroyed the title of nomarch, bringing all of Egypt back under a single rule. From this fully unified nation, he would raise a great army, marching it into Nubia and Palestine, expanding Egypt's borders past anything they had ever encompassed before. Sources from the time tell of a great warrior pharaoh fighting at the head of his armies, a furious, invincible king. Remember how I mentioned most of the pharaohs lost their divine status in the Middle Kingdom? Senusret was so cool and his reign so prosperous that he became the exception, living to see himself worshipped in the temples alongside the other gods. Despite the great increase in Egypt's wealth and power at this time, Senusret III's reign marked the beginning of great unrest in the Middle Kingdom. Songs such as the Lay of the Harper began to question the existence of an afterlife, while literature like the Admonitions of Ipuwer were penned, which lamented Egypt's current state and longed for the return of a past golden age. Dude, what do you mean?
I just think that...
I just conquered Nubia! Man, we have gold for days! Man, how is this not a golden age?
If only we could go back to a real golden age.
How is this not a real golden age? We're richer and bigger than we ever were. Is it because I didn't build a pyramid? Do you need a giant sand Toblerone before you're finally happy?
Things were so much better in the old kingdom.
Oh my me! The death of Senusret did by no means mark the death of his dynasty. Powerful kings succeeded him, including Sobekneferu, the first woman to rule over a unified Egypt. Despite the wealth, power, and land these later monarchs brought to Egypt, the feeling of general disquiet in the nation only grew through their reigns. When Sobekneferu died without an heir, the succeeding dynasty could not maintain the standards of its predecessors. A string of weak kings allowed power to slip away from the seat of the pharaoh, and Egypt began to slide back down towards chaos and disunity. This time, however, they didn't manage to slide all the way. Taking advantage of a weakened monarchy, the foreign Hyksos first seized control of Lower Egypt, then the entire nation. These Semitic Asiatic horsemen would go on to stabilize Egypt, albeit never nearing the heights Senusret had. Their reign marked the first total collapse of the Egyptian dynastic system since the Old Kingdom, and ended the Middle Kingdom entirely. A period of new tunes, new ways of life, and new gods, the Middle Kingdom marked the greatest break from tradition in ancient Egypt, and became the foundation for all the nation's future grandeur. As we ooh and ah over the majestic accomplishments of the new kingdom which succeeded them, let us remember that none of it would have been possible without this chain of wild, innovative kings, even if they didn't build any pyramids. It's okay, Senosret. We still love you.